Welcome to the stream. Tonight we're going to be talking the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about episodes 1 and 2 of the new Ahsoka show out on Disney Plus. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome to the Force Fandom, where we talk all things Star Wars. And right now, what does that mean? That means we're talking Ahsoka. So if you're new here, welcome. If you've been here for a while, glad you're here. If you're here live, let me know down in the comments below. If you're on the replay, all of that good stuff. Tonight, we are going to be talking about all of the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like, and the things that I'm hoping kind of improved but weren't that bad about the show. Of course, there's probably going to be things that I miss or things that I liked that you didn't. I would love to have that conversation together. And as always, all are welcome here. If you love Star Wars, you found a place to hang out. Thanks for stopping in. So let's hop right into it. And we're going to start talking about the good things that were in this show, because there was a lot that was good. And right off the bat, we see that this show felt like Star Wars. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by it felt like Star Wars? Well, what I think that means is you got an opening crawl, you had music, you had the opening screen feel like the beginning of a cinematic Star Wars show. Now, some of these might just be tokens to some, but it shows the care and the attention, I believe, that was put into this show. The music, with the exception of a few things, I didn't particularly love the music during Sabine's kind of motorcycle chase. And I probably should say this at the front end, spoilers, if you haven't watched the show, I'm going to be talking about a lot of the elements of the story, so there's really no way to avoid the spoiler nature of this conversation. But the music, the composition, the switching between scenes, there was a lot of times that I noticed we would go from one location to the next scene and location, and that would all be carried by the music. You would hear the practical things going on in the background. If it was in the hangar, you would hear the ships coming in. If you were outside, you would hear the natural things like at the shipyard and those things. But the transitions were done so well. It felt like Star Wars, but not just the music, not just the cinematography, just all of how this show began, particularly in episode 1. Everything screamed Star Wars. Now, that hasn't always been the case with every Star Wars show. And the challenge is, how do you tell new stories in a Star Wars universe while not just reliving what has been, not just making the old tropes and kind of just fan servicing everything? And I don't feel that that's been what we've gotten. Instead, it's really this attention to detail about what makes Star Wars Star Wars. It's not just throwing lightsabers into a scene and all of a sudden you have Star Wars. It's this deeper kind of just feeling that you get that many actually didn't like about Andor. And I thought that was somewhat of a fair criticism, is that it didn't really always feel like Star Wars. I actually really loved Andor, and I thought it was an amazing story that was told. But if there's one criticism that I would agree with, it didn't always feel like Star Wars. And I think that the music could have helped with that the way it did here in this. It was clear that Dave's hand, Dave Filoni, or as some of I've seen called in my comments, Dave Baloney, his hand was really all over this. He directed the first episode, and it shows in that beginning sequence. But that's not all. That's not all. That's not the only good stuff I saw. I loved all of the new things. A lot of times when something new is brought into a show, it can mess with what has been before, and there's some comments we might get into about that. Or you could be concerned about, how do you introduce new characters into a universe that is so saturated with so many different beloved characters. And I thought, just even from the opening scroll into that first scene where we get introduced, Baylan and Shin, really in this epic, just crazy interaction they have coming aboard a ship, and they're kind of welcomed sarcastically, not really thought to be Jedi because they were using an old Jedi code, kind of paying homage to some of the things that have come before in the original trilogy. But then all of a sudden it all flips, and you realize that these two are not Jedi. In fact, they are just taking apart all of these crew. And I don't know if you caught it. I did. There was this front crewman, Amon Calamari, that was there at the front, and he almost looked like this young teenager, just didn't know what to do. I just really enjoyed how Balin and Shin were introduced. Now, we knew they were coming. We've seen them in the trailers. This wasn't a surprise thing, but I'm really intrigued by these two characters and really how it's going to play out throughout the entire show. What else was new? Well, we got this whole new understanding of a galaxy and a pathway to that galaxy. This opens up so many possibilities. Much of what was thought is that Ezra and Thrawn were in the world between worlds, kind of, that they were taken there by the Purgle, but what we're finding out is it's actually this very far distant galaxy that just can't be jumped through hyperspace to get there. They're going to have to build all of this up with a different way to really navigate through the hyperspace lanes that are there. And that's really going to be what I think we're going to see happen in the next few episodes. But it's really intriguing to expand the Star Wars universe, to bring something new, to bring something exciting that can bring about a possibility of exploring more things. That's what really is something that I think the fans have desired. It's great to get these in-between stories, and we know how Andor ends. It's going to butt right into Rogue One. We know how some of these in-between stories lead to eventually the First Order. Like, we know where some of it's going. So to expand in this other way and create this whole nother galaxy and universe that could be explored really is intriguing. And I think it opens up a possibility of other things to be found in this universe that could continue the story and allow the show of Ahsoka to do more and go further than just what they're confined to in the time period we know, because there is an end date coming with the other canon elements that you just can't get around without flipping and changing the whole story. So really, particularly those two things, those new things, I thought were done really well. So what else is good? Huang, if I'm pronouncing that right, I might not be. I loved this droid. This is Ahsoka's droid and has been in service to the Jedi for generations and has seen Jedi after Jedi come. And he's the one who really goes back through the archives of what we see in the part of the episode where they're trying to find out who these mysterious people are on the screen, and he goes back through to investigate whose lightsaber hilt is this. And that was just one scene, but particularly his scenes in episode 2 with Sabine, I think were really, really good. It was an interesting way to introduce Sabine's possibility of becoming a Padawan, or again, coming under the tutelage and the mastery of Ahsoka. And I thought they did that really well. I thought the scene of Sabine trying to defuse or to get the information from the HK assassin droid, and Huang being really nervous about the whole thing exploding and wanting to pull the plug. I thought this droid really added a lot. It reminded me some of K2SO, a little bit dry and to the point, but still going to say some things that could bring some humor and levity. It was really a nice touch, something that I really enjoyed, and to be contrasted by another droid we're going to talk about later that I kind of felt everyone says was awesome, but I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree. What else is good? I thought the pacing was fantastic. Now, some of you I can already feel in the comments are jumping down there to rip me apart for this perspective, because I think many are criticizing the pacing and actually saying what's happening is not fast enough. The show's going too slow. Hear me out. Here's my thought. I am not interested in being dragged along from action sequence to action sequence, trying to cover up holes in the plot. Instead, I'm much more interested in being given thoughtful dialogue, world building, character interaction. I am okay with slow when I know slow is going somewhere. Now, where I will agree with folks that have problems with the pacing is when we get to the point of nothing has happened for multiple episodes, or nothing of consequence has happened for multiple episodes, and now we're left going, I don't want to watch the next thing. That, in my opinion, would be a failure of pacing, but I'm willing to say, I'm hooked, I'm in. There are things I really didn't like, but I'm okay with the nature of building this story. There's so many things right now that have been started as a storyline that are left hanging for us to think about. And through 2 episodes, we've been introduced to so many things. The Night Sisters have been brought back up with all of the lore that is in that. We've got this understanding and not sure of what's going to happen with this other galaxy. We have this possibility of Sabine being trained as a Jedi. We have this character Shin who has a Jedi braid, a Padawan braid, and we're wondering what she's going to be. Is she Balin's daughter? Is she someone who was around like an infant during the time of Order 66, which I don't think the timeline lines up with that. I think I just saw a video by Star Wars Theory that did that and went more into the timeline, and I kind of agree that she seems too young. At least the character appears too young to be one that was around at that time. So what's going on with that? I think I felt some tension between her following the orders of Balin, and Shin almost feels like one that might turn away. Again, there were all these things were opened up. We have Sabine and Ezra, and some of these we knew were going to be part of it going in, but I've been excited to see where it's building toward. And when you look back at the 2 episodes we got, there was so much that actually happened, even though it might not have been all action. Now, I think there are some things that definitely could have been done better, but overall, I actually thought the pacing of the show was right on. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Am I off in thinking this? Am I thinking that what is here is way faster than people are giving it credit for, and people are already checked out? I think that is if that's how you feel, let me know why down below. Would love to hear that. Now let's talk about the bad. And we have to go here because this has been my major criticism and one of my major frustrations of Obi-Wan Kenobi and that show and Reva getting stabbed. And I know people are coming up with explanations of why Qui-Gon still dies and all of these other folks survive. And it's not so much just that she was stabbed in the stomach. That's not the only thing. For me, is I think this was a lost opportunity. I agree with the methodology behind it. Sabine needed humbled. Sabine needed a moment to be at the low to recognize that she actually needs Ahsoka. It's not the other way around only. And I think she was going through, and the way that relationship was presented made it seem and feel like Sabine saw Ahsoka and said, I want nothing to do with you. I don't need you. You might need me, but I don't really want to need. So she takes the map and does her own thing and all of that. So she needed humbled. But I actually would have preferred if they had done something different, even maybe something more sinister, and to to show her inability in the Force and her inability to even wield a lightsaber well and all of those things. And yes, even pay homage in some ways to what has happened with Luke in his first interaction and fight with Vader, where he needed humbled to realize that he needed to go further. I wish her hand had been cut off. I really do. And I know some of you are going to probably roast me in the comments for saying that, but I think that would have made for such a better story. It would have made for this kind of losing a limb. There's just something so, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy about it. And maybe that would be too dark and too much for Disney. I hope not. I want you to go there. I think it's okay to go there. But imagine if that had happened instead of this just kind of stab in the stomach. Oh, I'm going to run away. I mean, there is a train of thought to say that Shin isn't fully dark side, so she doesn't necessarily really want to kill Sabine. But I don't know, because they leave the HK assassin droid there to probably get her when she comes back, or anyone that walks in. But imagine if just for a second, if they had done that, and then it's very similar and you can make that connection. It still feels like Star Wars. It doesn't feel like you're taking a cheap shot of, oh, that's been done already. Well, of course it's been done already. People would lose arms and limbs and stuff like that all the time. This is lightsabers. One kind of wrong move is completely the end. That's what's the beauty of Star Wars and these lightsaber duels that carry so much weight, because you know it could at any moment. And if we want to go say that's too dark, come on. You had Anakin cut off Dooku's head. It's not too dark to lose something like that. And or even if it had been a leg, or I think all I'm trying to say is I really didn't like the stab to the chest. I understand why she lived. It didn't look like a wound that would kill. But after the backlash of Kenobi, why do that again? It feels like it's cheapening the death of Qui-Gon. That's just how I feel. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong in that. That's just my gut, and I wish they had gone different. What do you think? Would that have been too much like Luke Skywalker for now Sabine to then have a cybernetic arm that I don't know. I just wish they had done it differently is what I'm saying. What else? The bad. I didn't like the focus of Sabine instead of Ahsoka. Hear me out. The show is entitled Ahsoka. People are tuning in to learn about Ahsoka. It felt like the show was more about Sabine's feelings, Sabine needing to be trained, Sabine failing in battle, Sabine solving the puzzle and getting the info from the head, and all of these types of things. And at the end of the day, it felt like we learned a lot about Sabine and we learned very little about Ahsoka. And for me, I think that there's some that might have tuned in. For those that are coming from the Rebels background and have seen Star Wars Rebels, I'm sure that they saw this and went, hey, that's no problem. That I get it. I'm all in. I love Sabine as a character, and I understand the need to expand and help tell the story of who these other characters are, but I don't even think they did a great job of that. If you have no idea who Sabine is when you turn on this show, you don't really know her backstory. I think it could have been handled with just one simple flashback of showing that tension between Ahsoka and Sabine, almost like Ahsoka turning and leaving Anakin we saw in Clone Wars, something similar to that, where Ahsoka leaves, where even that understanding of needing to leave and doing that, and the quote, what was the quote? There was a quote, I wrote it down, from Ahsoka when they were exploring this relationship. Here's what Ahsoka said: sometimes even the right reasons have the wrong consequences. I loved that line. That was such a good, deep, thoughtful thing to say. that even sometimes having the right reasons of doing something are going to bring about negative consequences. And you have to live with those consequences, right, wrong, or other. And so she clearly feels that her leaving and going away from Sabine was the right thing to do, even though it had painful consequences. And so, why not show that? Show a flashback of what Ahsoka's thinking and her reasoning for leaving, and maybe they'll explore that more. But I think it was lost as an opportunity to kind of go back with Ahsoka and let Sabine be the one. So we see Ahsoka's mindset, and then you can come back forward to present day and how that has injured and hurt and left Sabine feeling completely abandoned. She's lost Ezra, and now she's lost her master who she had trusted and now has left her, who did it for some specific reasons, of which we're not really going to dive into, or not yet at least, and we can go back to Rebels and watch through and pull some of that out. But again, that the storyline wasn't helped by allowing people who have not seen Rebels to understand more things. I don't think someone who has not enjoyed Rebels will watch Ahsoka, these 2 episodes, and also enjoy it. Or someone who has no idea of what Rebels is, but really saw the hype behind Ahsoka, because more than any other of the shows, this show was marketed and pushed, and trailer after teaser after advertisement, after Ahsoka going, or Rosario Dawson going and being here and being very vocal, and social media, like this show was marketed to the max. Around who? Around Ahsoka, not around Sabine. And so I think it's a missed opportunity, and one that kind of frustrated me, ultimately leaving a bad taste in my mouth, because I got to the end of the first episode, and yes, I thought they ended it well. I don't like where she was stabbed. We already went over that. But I think it ended on a cliffhanger, and Sabine's not going to die, but now this has forced a conversation between her and Ahsoka. And so you come to that next episode, and again, the whole episode, we got a little bit of Ahsoka and a lot of Sabine. And I just think that wouldn't have been the way that I would have started. I still think you can course correct it, but yeah, I don't know. That's my perspective. That's what I think could have been better. What's next? Now let's talk about the ugly. So the bad were things that I think were just flat out bad. These ugly things are things that I think have potential to still get better, or that I'm kind of mid on. I didn't hate it, or maybe hate is too strong a word. I didn't completely dislike it, but I still was left a little, the lightsaber fights. Maybe my expectation was too high. And that might be a fair realization. They felt clunky. It might have been the camera angles more than the choreography. It might have been like there was one scene, particularly between Shin and Sabine. I remember when she like rolled over or flipped over, or I don't even know what happened. I had to rewind multiple times, and I still was confused about what was she pushed? What did she fall? Did she do it intentionally? And again, it wasn't so bad for me that it frustrated me, but I was just like, oh, the opening battle with the HK droids that we saw with Ahsoka, I thought was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I liked it. It felt slow at times, and it felt that it was a little too methodical and not quite as precise and to the quick moment. I know they don't necessarily want Ahsoka to dispatch with them quickly. I'm not saying you win fast. I'm saying it felt like every movement was just a little on the slower side. Not indecisive, but just could be quicker. And I don't know if that's it didn't feel like it was just on the choreography. It felt also like the way the camera would move, and maybe they're trying to overcorrect and get away from the shaky cam type stuff that we saw in Kenobi that many folks were like, no, this ain't it. Get away from that. And I'm glad we didn't get any of that, because that doesn't feel like Star Wars to me. That feels like something different. And so maybe, and here's, I haven't heard anyone say this. This is going to be my perspective. I don't know what Dave's specific perspective is around lightsaber duels. And I know for many of old trilogy people who love all of the original stuff, the lightsaber duels getting kind of intense and crazy in the prequels was almost a breaking of canon for many, because you then get to the next story in the timeline. You come into A New Hope in there, and the lightsaber duels are these medieval like hacks, two-handed swings, and nothing like what we see between Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Like, it's just not what we see. But let's be honest, people loved the duels in the prequels. Even people I think that didn't like the prequels, many of them would still say those were fantastic and some of the best lightsaber stuff we've gotten. And it just didn't feel like it was up to that. And I don't want to put that blame on Rosario. I don't think that's fair. But I'm hoping things speed up in that regard. It felt a little clunky. It felt a little herky jerky, not all there, and it could have been smoother, quicker. And I don't know what the reasoning is for that. I'm not sure what that was specifically. But it's just, I think it could have been a little better. What else? Oh, I said that already. Oh, I got 2 in here. That's great. That's great. Then what am I missing? Okay. This bugged me. I was kind of annoyed by the whole map Rubik's Cube thing. I think it was just a plot device. It wasn't really well thought out. What is the first thing you're going to do when you pick up this orb ball thing? Like, if you're going to analyze this and you're going to hold it and you're like, man, we need a key to unlock this thing. I don't know how to do it. What should I do? One of the things you're going to do is you're going to try to twist it. You're just going to. It would happen. And the fact that it took this staring at the 3 pillars and the way they are in the map to see that it was this kind of infinity loop triangle trinity symbol type thing that, maybe if I now... Come on. It was a plot device just to get us to make Ahsoka have to go talk to Sabine. I understand the need to do that. I wish it had been handled differently. I don't necessarily have a reason or a suggestion, but it just felt like, okay, I understand that Sabine's artsy. I understand that she's an outside the box thinker. I understand that these are the things she's good at. Okay, fine with all of that. She's good with tech. She's good with art. She's good with thinking. She's good with problem solving. Fantastic. Don't make it a Rubik's Cube. You're telling me no one tried to jiggle those and find, they twist. Maybe we have to put them in the right order. Now, don't get me wrong. I can't solve a Rubik's Cube, so I'd have to look up the solution in the algorithm to get it together. But if it was a map to go find Ezra and Thrawn, you best believe I'm going to take some time. I mean, I'll call up Chris Ramsey and be like, yo, solve this puzzle for me, right? And I guess that's kind of what they did, but it just felt like, I don't know. They had no leads. They weren't like, hey, we think it's this, or again, maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. I'm just hoping we don't get a bunch of these plot device things that really aren't that well thought out, or that feel kind of, well, that was kind of easy, and now I see that there was a different reason that had to happen that way. Kind of remind me a little bit of a certain dagger that you had to hold up, right? That's kind of how I felt. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too harsh, but that's my perspective. Can we talk for a moment? I don't know what it was, if it was camera angles or the speed of the way the camera was moving, but we have that opening temple scene that felt like something right out of, it felt like something out of Indiana Jones. It had that feel of this temple moment, and the spires being twisted and them going down into the floor and all of that stuff. And then the fighting with the HK droids, pretty cool. And then they just were like self-destruct, like they announced this self-destruction, and you're like, oh, thank you for announcing that so I can have enough time to turn and run. Instead of you just vaporizing and destroying me right then and there. And then she turns to run, and it was like, oh. And I don't know if that's her speed, but there's so many ways to do camera angles and make things feel fast. I'm not fast. If I had to run on camera, I would look like a freaking slob trying to get moving, especially if I was running alongside something that looked fast moving. So I think to do that, I wish they had done quick camera cuts, fast camera cuts. And the same thing when she was trying to chase the end of episode 2, when she was trying to chase Merrick and all of that. I was like, well, you're not going to catch him. Like, it just felt so slow. Like, and again, in that opening scene, I was like, she didn't make it out of there. If she had to actually run that far, it just didn't feel fast. And again, that might be a lot of things, and it shouldn't be reliant on the speed of the actor. You should find a way to make that, even if it has to be a stunt double from different angles so that you can get better speed shots. Do that. It's not a huge deal, but if you're going to try to build action and you want to make it feel intense and fast-paced, then you have to match that with the camera. I think the music did that great. I think a lot of things did that great. The storyline did that. But then you got to these scenes of Ahsoka running, and you're just kind of like, oh, you're really slow. It just felt kind of goofy, kind of out of place. And I think it could have just been better. And so the last ugly, let's talk about Sabine and Ezra. And I saw Josh from the Den of Nerds had mentioned this. This is where I heard it, and I've thought more about this. And for those that have watched Rebels and those that have tuned in to a lot of what Rebels have done and enjoyed, you kind of got the sense that there was more to this Sabine Ezra relationship. Now, I'm not necessarily one who's hugely in favor, hugely even a word, massively, largely, or we'll do the Donald Trump bigly. I'm not really that in favor of romance stories, but I think that they can be used in important ways. Anakin and Padme. There were times when it was cringe on screen. I understand that. But at the same time, it needed to be to get Anakin to the place where he was going to turn to the dark side. With Sabine and Ezra and the being friend-zoned comment, I'm going to wait and see how it plays out. Maybe it is for the best. But I think allowing that storyline to be open wouldn't have been a bad thing for a little while. That's all I'm saying. I think it could have been something that was interesting. It could have been something that would bring intrigue, and something that could be, if Ezra and Sabine had on-screen chemistry, to be an okay thing to explore. It gives her extra desire and reason to get Ezra back. And it kind of leaves this open storyline where if one of them is to die, it even heightens that loss if it gets to that point. I don't know. Let me know. What do you think? Am I off? Would a romance? And I know Dave has said it's not something they wanted to do, so I'm not surprised. But I was kind of like, well, at least just let it be, because maybe Sabine has feelings, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe Sabine has feelings and Ezra doesn't. This, that, the other. I don't know. But it didn't strike for me. It felt forced to be in your like last message, to kind of friend zone someone in your goodbye message. Felt like it forced, I guess is the best way to say it. But I don't know. That's my good. That's my bad. That's my ugly. What was yours? Let me know down below. What were your favorite parts? What were your least favorite parts? And what are the parts you're like, nah, kind of mid on? Guys, I appreciate you checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. If you haven't already, hit that like button. And if you want to see more Star Wars content, click right here, and YouTube's going to show you something, one of the videos that I've made on this channel that they think you're going to like. Remember, the Force will be with you always. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.